Mm-hmm. How do I make this longer? Ah, much better. This should work now. Yeah, there we go. Works fine. Okay, so the number one way, if you got an Ethernet cable that's too short, let me get my other cables. If your Ethernet cable is too short, you can just buy a longer cable, or even longer cable, or buy in bulk and make your own. I have a video on that, and up in the card there's a video on how to make your own Ethernet cable ends so that you can make your own custom cables. This was a custom made cable from this spool right here, but you can also buy cables a little longer than you need and then cut them to length and make your own ends and do that too. But you don't have to be satisfied with that. So that's the number one way to do that. We're going to go a number two way and a number three way and a bonus that you might not have thought of. Welcome to Home Tech Adventure, where we try to give you the best tips and advice on buying, using, and maintaining computers and related equipment in your home. For method number two, you're going to need some tools. You need some way to strip the outer jacket. You can use a good utility knife, as long as they got a nice sharp blade and you're good, and don't press too hard. You can do it with the utility knife. I have done it. I have this cable stripper that's adjusted on this little thing right there to, oh, whoop, you guys can't see that. There you go. Just on that little thing right there, that little knife blade in there is adjusted just right to score the jacket without cutting into the inner cables. So this works really well. And there's a little adjuster on the top to do that. You're going to need some kind of wire cutter. This method should be considered an emergency method. And the reason is that you're going to have to destroy these cable ends. You're going to have to cut them off. Now, the ends, if you can see, there's kind of a color pattern in there. And that color pattern is actually two different color patterns you can use, an A and a B version of the color pattern that you use to wire these. And it doesn't really matter as long as you're consistent on each end of the cable which one you use. However, if someone uses the A version of the color pattern and the B version of the color pattern on this one, and you splice them together the way I'm going to show you here, it might not work. And the reason it might not work is because the wires won't match up on either end because of the difference in the color pattern. So this will probably work because most people use the B version on the connectors, but it is optional. Some people use the A version. So anyway, we're going to show you how to do this. And we're going to go really fast, I think, on some of this stuff. But anyway, so what you have to do is you have to cut these off. And I'm going to save this boot because I will use it for another connector. It just slides back. And the reason is because I made my own cable. These come separately. You just buy them separately and you just slide them on. But anyway, let's get this cut off. So, oops, get my cutter out and cut that off and cut this one off. Oh, yeah, ruined two perfectly good connectors. But anyway, you have to strip the outer jacket first, and I'm giving pretty generous amount here. This one, this nifty little thing, you just whip it around and you got that. Now you notice I have 4 pairs of wires that are twisted together and this solid plastic piece in the middle. The plastic piece in the middle needs to be cut off. If you are using Cat 5 wire, you probably won't have this solid piece in the middle. Also, and this is where I'm going to use the other wire cutter, the wires vary in thickness. They vary solid, stranded, and whatever. This is solid core 23 gauge, which is pretty darn thick, Cat 6 wire. If you're using a Cat 5, it's going to be thinner, and there are stranded wires that are a little bit easier to work with. But what you have to do is you got to strip these wires. So I'm going to just here, I'm going to do orange wire, and so we'll do that one. Then you have to straighten wire, and you can do this. Or sometimes it works better to use a tool to do that. Kind of use this guide to help you straighten it out. Do this. twist these together like this. There we go, that's good enough. And then solder that connection and use some electrical tape to insulate it. And then do that 8 more times. This is why this is an emergency method. This is just kind of crazy. Yeah, don't do this, please, if you can possibly help it. It does work, but don't do it, please. Method number 3 for connecting these two ends is to use what's called an inline coupler or Ethernet coupler or inline Ethernet coupler or some variation of that. Here's one I bought at Home Depot, and you can see it's got an Ethernet port on each end, and I mean, gosh, how simple can this be? And these aren't terribly expensive. This one's about $6 at Home Depot. So yeah, that'll work. There's variations on those too. This one I like. It goes that way. And the reason I like that one a little bit better for some things, oh, it actually cracked. But anyway, it's because you can use a wire to mount it. Okay, you could have something to hold the wires down or whatever, but you can use a wire to hold it down for mounting purposes. So that's kind of nice, because then you can just, well, if we flip it over, then you can just pull your plugs out like this, and you know, it's mounted to the whatever you want to mount it to. So I kind of like that kind of coupler. Then there's this kind of coupler, which works exactly the same way, a little bit smaller size. Oh, it goes in that way. Okay, anyway, that's a little bit smaller size. Now you notice this little thing on the end. That's because this is what's called a keystone coupler, and that's made to fit in to a wall plate like this one. So this wall plate is meant to be mounted on the wall in like an outlet box or something like that. And to put this in, all you do, and if I get this the right way, sometimes I can't remember which way it goes. So is that the right way? No, that's not the right way. This way. Okay, so if you go in like that, you can see it's nice and mounted there. So then what you can do, and I did this in the house that I'm in right now for wiring, because I didn't have that much wiring to do. There are other keystones that are better if you're doing a whole lot of these things, but I wasn't doing very many of them. I didn't have very long runs, so it was easier, since I had already invested in making the cable ends, to run the wires and then put the cable in there, and then to connect up my computer, I go on the other side and connect up my computer just like that. So that worked really well for me. I like these keystone couplers. It allows you to save the investment if you've already invested in tools to make the Ethernet ends, and you don't have the tools to wire to a keystone normal one where you break out the wires and use a punch down tool and stuff like that. It's kind of a nice way to do it. So that's the third option. As promised, I have a bonus third method that you might not have thought of, and it involves using an old Ethernet switch. Maybe you have one of these lying around. Make sure it's good speed, but if you're just connecting a printer, you can get by with an old 10100 switch. This is a gigabit switch. But anyway, you can just, come from the switch or a wall outlet, wherever you're going, connect into the switch and connect out to the device that you're going to. And I got that upside down. There we go. Okay, so you can do that through a switch. So the switch is your extender, and that's the third method. Now there is a little bit caveat with this one. If you're just using a computer like this to connect to the internet, you're probably nothing else you need to do. But if you're connecting to a printer through another switch from another switch, you probably are going to have to set a static IP for the printer and connect the printer as an IP, and that's a little more complicated, so it's usually not just plug and play with that. But connecting a computer to the internet through a switch with another switch, it should work just fine. You can probably have multiple switches. By the way, make sure you plug in the switch. This one, I don't have the cord plugged in. But anyway, if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. Please write some comments below as to what other videos you might like to see. I do read the comments, and I try to do some of the videos, or some of the topics that people suggest are just not something that I can do. But I do appreciate that you comment on them, and I will try to do some of those things. Hopefully, you enjoyed this home tech adventure, and as always, please remember to have fun on your own home tech adventure.